in the chat. If you have any questions for me, feel free to put those over in the chat as well. I will have some free resources available if you reach out either by phone, email, or by scanning the QR code and finding me on social media. Hi, Roxy. So glad to see some familiar faces here with us today. I just finished up at the APCO Telecommunicators Symposium in Greensboro, North Carolina. We had dispatchers from all over the state, and so it's really wonderful to be able to share this in that capacity, and now to be live and virtual for everyone all across the country and across the world. So we'll go ahead and get started. Just to share a little bit about me, a lot of times I get asked the question, so you're like a chef? I have a meal prep and catering company here in Central North Carolina, and we serve everywhere from High Point into North Raleigh. And although we do have prepared and ready to eat more portion control meals, I do a lot more than just prepare meals and cook in the kitchen. I also co-host wellness and yoga retreats and was part of the North Carolina NENA retreat for first responders. I teach yoga, have advanced certifications for breath work, for yoga for trauma, for PTSD and anxiety. Sometimes I climb on counters, and a lot of you may recognize me from these guys. Who in here has met Chase and Ryan? They've really, I really enjoy having them in my life, and being with Ryan has exposed me to so much in, yeah, Chase is my homie. We love it. There's stickers somewhere that say exactly that say like, Chase is my homie. But he really enjoyed being in Greensboro today and enjoys getting to travel with Ryan. But back to being asked if I'm a chef. So oftentimes I get that question and I struggle with how to answer, because yes, even though I do have a meal prep and catering based company, what I do is so much more. So on the screen, I have a couple of messages from my clients where we're able to help them either lose weight, improve their metabolic markers and lab test results. So one of my favorites is the 50 pounds off. That was a huge accomplishment for that client. We also have messages here about people who are struggling with cravings and snackings who are now able to have healthier habits. And so for me, my work goes way beyond just the kitchen and being a chef. So I love this slide so much, and I'm sure that it resonates. Earlier today when I asked this question in the symposium, pretty much everyone across the classroom raised their hand. So oftentimes, like when we wake up in the morning feeling bad, our immediate instinct is, let me medicate with caffeine. And, you know, your brain's telling you, coffee is not a food group. How about a meal? How about sleep? But we get stuck in that logic of, I don't have energy. So I love this, and it's like, oh, look, cookies, because we all know what every break room looks like, especially around this time of year. It's just full of cookies, treats, cakes. So the mental health and physical wellness industry is a $5 trillion industry for the U.S. alone. Even with that, mental illness and depression has increased by 13%, and obesity and physical health disorders have increased by 33%. And this is over the last 10 years. Some of the reasons that we see these increases include a more sedentary lifestyle, easier access to convenient and unhealthy food options, and higher levels of stress. So as of right now, 1 in 3 adults in the U.S. have metabolic syndrome. So that is typically categorized as a combination of the factors visible on the right. It includes type 2 diabetes, elevated cholesterol, excess abdominal fat, low HDL, and high blood pressure. So 1 in 3, which is pretty scary. So what are some of those causes of metabolic syndrome? Of course, a lot of it revolves around lifestyle choices, diet, movement, how you take care of yourself, and of course, stress. So this picture probably looks really, really familiar for a lot of people in this industry. We've got the phone in one hand, coffee in the other. We're always busy. We always have something to respond to. We're grabbing fast food as often as possible simply because we're in a crunch for time and it's easy. A lot of times we're sitting, you're answering those calls, and you're under tremendous amounts of stress. So all of that, the increase in mental health disorders, the increase in physical and chronic disease, as well as metabolic syndrome, stress, lifestyle choices, dietary choices, all contribute to these top 10 causes of death. So the top 10 causes include cardiovascular disease, cancer, stroke, respiratory disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, kidney disease, COVID, and influenza. So on average, the typical adult experiences 5 traumatic events during their lifetime. What about first responders? Siri has something to say about it. So on average, the typical U.S. adult experiences 5 traumatic events. What do you think that number will be for first responders? Feel free to use the chat. So typically a traumatic event for the average adult may be a serious medical, yeah, y'all, Roxy said 4. I love it. Yeah, so typically for the average adult, that may be death of a family member or a loved one. It could be a chronic illness, maybe a car accident or a physical injury. Those are all traumatic events for most people. But for first responders, it can be 5 per week, depending upon your comm center and the types of calls, call frequency, call volume. You could experience anywhere to 200 in a year. So more than 60% of first responders report not having enough recovery time between traumatic incidents. I love this slide, and this is taken directly from the NINA Wellness Continuum. It says a study of 911 telecommunicators identified symptoms consistent with diagnoses of clinical depression and PTSD at 24%. Those rates are 4 to 5 times higher than the U.S. average. Newer research points to obesity and elevated risk of chronic life-threatening disease due to chronic sleep deprivation and chronic stress. So the depression, PTSD, or both is 17 to 25% for the first responder industry. Obesity is 53 to 89%. Those statistics are pretty scary. Overall, the general U.S. population, the statistics are scary. But when we look at your group in particular, when we look at, so numbers are still coming in on how many traumatic events a first responder may experience in a year. Yes, thank you, Roxy, for putting the continuum out there. I really actually kind of enjoy digging into the numbers and understanding what is specific for your industry. So let's talk a little bit about that stress. I know that a couple other presenters also talked about stress and the effects on the body. Of course, being nutrition focused, this will have a little bit of swing, so bear with me. In a typical stress event, you're activating the sympathetic nervous system. The amygdala sends a signal to the hypothalamus to cue the sympathetic nervous system to activate. So typically what's going to happen is your heart rate's going to go up, your eyes are going to dilate, your airways will constrict, the breathing will shallow, and your adrenals will release cortisol. It's also going to suppress digestion and immunity to use your body's resources to fight or flight for that immediate stressor. So what about long-term elevated cortisol? So this is where it gets really interesting. Long-term elevated cortisol impacts how the body stores fat. It can influence your appetite, your energy, your emotions, sleep, sex drive, hormones, and it can lead to elevated levels for anxiety and depression. It also increases ghrelin. So does this picture look pretty familiar? I know oftentimes in the comm center and with the clients that I work with outside of public safety and inside of public safety, this is super common. Soda, caffeine, sweets, chips, cookies, all the above. So ghrelin is our hunger hormone. That's what drives appetite. This is what cues stress eating, binge eating, emotional eating, and is that reward-seeking behavior via taste sensation. It influences our hormones as well as our sleep cycle. So we really can thank ghrelin for driving those cravings and the desire to eat more and more processed foods and convenient items. So ghrelin will keep us craving this right here. The average price for fast food has went up about 17%. It's now coming in nationally between $12 and $14 for the combo that you see on the screen. And it's getting really expensive. So where it used to be cheap to go through that drive-through line, it's not really all that cheap anymore. And especially if you're Grubhubbing, yeah, it doesn't taste $12 worth. So a lot of times when you have something you're like this and you're really disappointed and you're like, that was not worth it. It wasn't all that good. So a lot of times in high stress, what are you craving? Sugar, fat, and carbs. So let's talk a little about those three. Most sodas contain about 65 milligrams of added sugar, which is 130% of the daily value. It can give you quick energy followed by fatigue. The sugar rush is often just a surge in insulin, promoting the storage of sugar as fat. What about fat? They say fat is good to have in your diet, right? That is true, but not necessarily from fast foods. So the average fast food contains 40 grams of fat, or 50% of the daily value. Those types of processed fats can trigger inflammation and contribute to high cholesterol, potentially leading to heart disease, even impaired cognitive function, and liver damage. So we're also craving carbs. In those times of high stress, it's easy to go for carb-heavy foods. Most fast food meals have about 165 grams of carbs, which is 60% of the daily value. Highly processed, nutrient-void carbs also spike insulin, and any excess is converted or stored as fat. So essentially, your body doesn't know much different between processed white bread or a hamburger bun and pure sugar. So long-term stress elevates the risk for mental and physical health implications, including many of those chronic diseases that we saw, those top 10. The 17 to 25% of first responders are positive for signs and symptoms of depression, PTSD, or both. And again, those obesity rates are 53 to 89%. The great news is that 70% of the top 10 chronic diseases are preventable with a healthy lifestyle and nourishing food. What we really truly need is more of this. So more movement, more nourishing foods, and more ways to offset the stress and impact of your role. So of all the things in the communication center, whether it's equipment, technology, tools that make it possible for you as a first responder, the most valuable thing is the people. It's you. It's the individual that's taking that call. That's the most valuable asset in a communication center is the people. And so what we really want to focus on is taking care of you. But in high stress, it's harder to choose nourishing, high quality foods. So let's talk a little bit about nourishing the body for physical and mental health. So we have 6 key components here: nutrition, hydration, movement, breath, rest, and support. So basically another illustration of ways to nourish the body, except for instead of words, we're using pictures. So a lot of times people will come to me and they're asking like, well, my lab markers are not great, or I've gained weight over the last 5 years. I'll even have people that have come to me who have experienced major medical issues. And some people have tried every single one of these diets that are listed, but oftentimes we get way too complicated and way too restrictive. There's a ton of information out there today about food, about nutrition. There's someone always selling some supplement, but there's really truly no magic fix. And what may work for one person may not work for everyone. So I love to focus on this 80-20 rule. With my clients, this is super important because it allows them to have a little wiggle room for things that they enjoy, but the primary focus of their diet is on whole, nourishing foods. So this is actually a picture of some of the meals that I create through my business that we serve our clients all across North Carolina. And one of the things that you'll see that's different in this photo than the photo with the cookies, the cake, and the sodas and the coffee is that in the photo with the sodas and the cookies, the only color was coming from the packaging of those items. Here, the color and the ingredients, or the color is coming from the ingredients. In that first picture to the far left, you have shrimp, sweet peppers, broccoli, purple cabbage, green beans. In the second picture, we have a pulled pork dish with broccoli, carrots, purple cabbage. And in the far right picture, we have a photo of one of our grilled chicken salads. Our dressings are made in-house. We have about 12 that I truly love and that circulate quite often. But the great thing about them is there's no added sugars, no preservatives, no artificial colors. Nothing on this photo was ever frozen. And so it's really just a great illustration of what a well-balanced, nutrient-focused meal looks like. So again, here, just another illustration of what that 80-20 split looks like. So in the bottom 2 categories, we have plants. In that second category, we have all of our protein sources, as well as cheese, oils, nuts, grains. And in the top, we have 20% for some of those items that maybe pizza or ice cream or cookies or bread. So what we really want to focus on is an 80-20 split, primarily focusing on nutrient-dense food. Again, the focus should be solely on nutrition. So oftentimes if we think back to that very first slide where we wake up, maybe we're feeling kind of crappy, or we feel like we went out and drank a bottle of whatever your favorite thing may be, but you didn't. A lot of it could be a situation where you want to ask yourself, well, have I drank water? Have I moved my body? Have I actually given my body fuel to operate and function optimally? in a high stress environment, it's even more important to focus on nutrition so that we can offset the likelihood for chronic diseases. So when we talk about balanced meals, my chart does a great example of illustrating that. They have the pretty little plate with the divider. And we want 50% of our plate to be vegetables or fruit, 25% to be lean protein, and 25% to be healthy carbohydrates. So when we talk about nutrient-dense foods, we want to focus on foods that are high in minerals, vitamins, protein, and good fat. We want to eliminate or limit foods that are high in sodium, sugar, starch, and bad fat. So good and bad carbs. I don't love classifying foods as good and bad. Typically, I just kind of say poor choices, because one great example is, all right, we have Dave's Killer Bread versus our old school white fluffy bread. Now they're both bread, but one choice is better than the other. And so let's not categorize all bread as bad, because that's not accurate. So when we talk about carbs, though, one of the things that we want to focus on is more plant-based carbohydrates versus processed carbohydrates that are void of nutrients. So on that left-hand side, we have leafy greens, nuts and seeds, fruits, lentils and beans, oats, quinoa, and brown rice. On that right-hand side, that is a lot of our processed items, that white bread, the ice cream, potato chips, cereal, cookies, all of the items that really, truly have been processed, refined, and have added sugars. So let's talk a little bit about glycemic index. So typically what happens when we wake up and we're feeling bad, we start reaching for caffeine to help us have more energy. We start reaching for sugar because our cravings are through the roof, and we're creating a very volatile blood sugar levels. So of course we're going to feel depleted. We're going to feel great 1 minute, and then we're going to have that spike, and then we're going to have followed by the crash. So when we talk about the glycemic index, it's just important to remember that a low glycemic index, eating low glycemic index foods can help regulate blood sugar levels, can reduce the risk of developing chronic disease like diabetes, and it can help stabilize your energy and prevent excess inflammation. Does anybody have any questions so far? A lot of times this is the slide where we really get an opportunity to kind of chat through some of the options. So when we look at watermelon, which I absolutely love, it's just primarily sugar and water, which is why it's so great and recommended as an option to hydrate yourself when you're feeling depleted or maybe you're out in the sun. But it's also super high glycemic, which means it can create that very rapid spike in sugar, followed by the crash or the decline when it comes to your glycemic index. So where does granola sit? A lot of times it's hard to determine with foods like that. So marketing and packaging may include words or slogans to make us believe that it's healthy, but one of the key indicators is looking at how much added sugar it has. So if it's just a raw granola, a lot of times they'll use honey as a sweetener, which is a great option, but of course we want to look at how much added sugar from what source. So we really want to limit those added sugars, especially if we're talking about the glycemic index impact, because we won't more stabilized energy long term. So oftentimes when we're in those high stress environments and our body is using sugar in our body and we're craving more sugar in our body, the worst thing that we can do is eat poorly and then experience those very rapid environment and very highs and lows when it comes to sugar levels. So where does granola sit? It truly honestly depends. I think we would have to look at the packaging to determine how much added sugar it has, whether or not it's sweetened. Yeah, the crash does suck. So again, kind of overall, when we're talking about nutrition and being nourished for high stress, one of the most important things is giving your body the nutrients that it needs. Typically, we're left craving some of those really poor choices. We're left craving high fat foods, high sugar foods. We're left with copious amounts of coffee. And so oftentimes those are exactly the things that we really truly should be avoiding, because we need to give our body the nutrients that it needs to function properly. So I love to recommend a protein power plate for my people. So typically what that is like, think charcuterie board. We get tryptophan and we're able to boost serotonin and dopamine through eating high quality protein. So think turkey, eggs, nuts, beans, seeds, all of those help boost serotonin and dopamine. So how do we prevent grabbing the fast food and eating really poorly? We have healthy options close by. So often now, the reason it's easy to go through a fast food line. It's easy to get home after a really long, stressful day and be like, I don't feel like cooking. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to wash dishes. And so it's much easier to Grubhub or Uber Eats and it'll be there in 20 minutes. But oftentimes what we really want to do is be intentional with the items that we purchase. Set aside some time to prepare balanced meals and have healthy snacks. For me, one of the things that I do is, instead of buying the full family size bag of chips, because typically, it's just me. So if I eat the whole bag, then I'm the only one to blame. But instead of buying the whole family size bag, I'll actually buy the small portions, because it helps with portion control and moderation. But having healthy options close by is the key. So how many people use Instacart or order their groceries online? Feel free to use the chat. Yeah. I really love and recommend ordering your groceries online, because it allows you to be really intentional. There are too many people in those stores, especially in some of the Walmarts. It's like you go in there and it's like the town hangout. Yeah, so I really love shopping online, using Instacart, or even doing the in-store pickup, because I'm really intentional with what I purchase. When you go into the grocery store, it's so easy to see the packaging and the way that things are marketed nowadays, and to believe that they may be healthy. And then you get home with like nothing to actually prepare a healthy meal with. So just being intentional with your purchasing can go a long ways, and having a plan. So whether or not, Kroger, delivery, I love it. Yeah, so I highly recommend. Yeah, so not only are you able to save money and be really intentional Yeah. A lot of times when I'm at conferences or events, I will Instacart stuff to the hotel, especially if I'm flying in, whether or not it's a couple things of fruit and some granola bars and a case of water, just so I have those things. For me, a lot of times before the conferences, I'll wake up pretty early naturally. So I'll wake up pretty early. And of course, if I'm traveling with Chase, he's ready to go outside and I need a quick, healthy option. And fruit and granola bars can be a really good way to get your day started nutritionally. But shopping online really does allow you to be a lot more intentional and to have healthy options close by. Setting aside some time to prepare balanced meals and snacks can keep you from coming home on a weekday night and being completely zapped mentally and physically and not wanting to prepare any food. How many of you know that feeling where you're physically, mentally, emotionally drained, and the last thing you want to do is get in the kitchen? I know for me, there are certain nights of the week where I just absolutely have, since 1991, every single day. Yeah. So I love a good, easy recipe, and I do have quite a few that I can share if you reach out. And I have some really great resources, including some tips and tricks, some consistency trackers, as well as some recipes for people who reach out and send me a message. But there are days, especially where you just, yeah, there are days when the last thing you want to do is get in the kitchen. You're just mentally, emotionally, physically drained. And having a good, healthy option is important because that's exactly what your body needs. So who likes the way that this looks? I know I sure do. So this is a really great illustration of a balanced meal or a balanced day of meals. Yes, we have caffeine in there. There's a time and place. But I really love this photo. It's a great illustration. Yeah, there's so much color. And so one of the things I want to talk about is eating various colors. So one of the recommendations I make for my clients is eat 5 colors per day. So that allows you to get a variety of nutrients and minerals and vitamins from your food. And it also, the variety helps fuel and feed that healthy gut bacteria. The gut has become such a hot topic, and it is true. The majority of serotonin and dopamine is produced in the gut. And so if we fuel our body well, we can feel really well. Yeah, someone says I'd eat better if someone made it for me. Well, I'm not sure where you're at, but that is an option here in Central North Carolina. If you ever want to talk about some specific options for you, even some healthy snacks that don't require any cooking, we can talk about those. Not Skittles, the color. Yeah, we can taste the rainbow, and we're not talking about Skittles. Okay. Yeah, so I stand behind eating the 5 colors per day. Also, too, we want that protein power focus. For some of my people in public safety, one of the recommendations that I have is find a protein powder that you really, really like and keep it in your desk at your comm center. So if you have a really busy shift and you need that extra fuel, you can reach for a protein source first instead of going for the chips. Because if your body is full, you're going to be a lot less likely to reach for some of those poor choices. But having the protein can be a really sustainable source of energy and fuel. So over time, the biggest thing is knowing that with consistent change, you'll see improvements in the way that you feel. You can reach a healthier weight. optimal body function. We can reduce stress, improve digestion, help with our sleep, hormone balance, build immunity, and we can fight inflammation. We can even reduce our risk for those top 10 chronic diseases. Does anybody have any questions? Earlier today when I was on the top 10 causes slide and I asked people in the room how many people in their family had one, more, or a combination of the top 10, and every single person in the room raised both hands. And I think that's really important because a lot of times the conversation, or a lot of times there's a question around, is it nature or is it nurture? And yes, too, I do believe both have save money by using Instacart. A lot of times the question is it nature or is it nurture when it comes to our health and some of these chronic diseases? And it is both. But we have to make the effort and consistently care for our bodies in order to offset the likelihood for chronic disease. Does anybody have any questions?
There is one there in the Q&A. However, I want to record. I need to record it. So when we get to the end, I'll go over it with you.
Okay. I'm afraid to click off because Ricardo told me that if I clicked away that it might take us out of the slide. So the biggest thing is just understanding that the choices that we make around food and nutrition impact how we feel and can either increase or decrease our risk for long-term chronic diseases. Also, too, I have a consistency tracker that I would love to share with you guys. It's up on my refrigerator here at the house. I send it to every single one of my clients. And the primary focus is, actually, I have a copy right here in front of me. So the primary focus is nutrition, hydration, movement, and recovery. Yeah. Get Instacart delivered to your center. So the consistency tracker helps you see, am I taking care of myself? Am I hitting those main markers of consistent behavior? And how is that impacting how I feel? If we wake up every day with no energy, feeling like trash, and we look back and historically our food choices have been really, really poor, there's a correlation. But when we start focusing on nutrition, hydration, and movement and recovery, we can offset some of those statistics. Yes, not another pizza party. You do not. So many people say, we had a really bad call. We did an incident debriefing. They ordered pizza. How many of you are familiar with that? Or, hey, it's been a really wild week. We're short-staffed. Someone's bringing in donuts. Yeah, all the time. Yep. Yeah. So oftentimes it's those items that people or vendors will bring in, or that we may order as a treat for our team. But really true, a lot of times we have to start with healthy choices and creating a healthy work environment. Donuts every Friday at the center. The holidays equal, the poor firefighters around here. I know every time I go in there, there's a whole row of stuff that people from the community have brought in. There's typically like a pizza boxes that are a couple of days old. Somebody made muffins, cookies, a pie, a cake every single time. Now, as good and tasty as those things may be, from a nutritional perspective, they're really not offering you anything for your body. I think that's awesome. So again, the main focus is really about nourishing the body. If we're eating nutrient void foods and we're feeling terrible, what we want to do is focus on nutrition and wellness so that over time we'll see changes. We can offset those statistics for chronic diseases. We can improve the likelihood of not being one of the 3 people that have metabolic syndrome. So what are some items that we could bring in that aren't donuts or cookies or pizza? Does anybody have any suggestions or ideas? Yeah, a veggie tray. Even charcuterie boards would be a great option. Yeah, meat and cheese trays. So I love the meat and cheese tray option because it gets back to that protein power plate. Apples and oranges, yeah, fruit, a fruit tray, a fruit bowl. I love the meat and cheese option. What about vegetables with dip and hummus? I think those are all really great options. One of the reasons why I particularly love the meat and cheese trays is because they're a great way to get protein as well as fuel the body. If we mix in cheese, meats, crackers, olives, artichokes, yeah, avocado, even hard-boiled eggs are a great way to get protein and nutrients into the body. I think the biggest takeaway here is knowing that the choices, yeah. So a healthy meal, that's a great way to encourage and get your team involved. Yeah. She said, more olives, please. Yeah. I think that's wonderful. I really, truly do believe that the biggest thing is changing up what's in our comm center and what's readily available. I was recently in a comm center, and instead of having the traditional style vending machine, they made their own little vending station. And it included a couple of really quick carby items, like Pop-Tarts, but it also had oatmeal. It had trail mix. It had some higher quality protein bars. Okay. I think those are all great options. I really, truly do. Again, I am here to help and to continue this conversation. I think it's a really important to focus on nourishing the people in your comm center, encouraging healthy habits, building that healthy workspace, and junkie. Yeah, caffeine and sugar may be a quick fix, but from a long-term perspective, it's not providing any nutrients that we need. So if you have questions, you can always reach out to me by email, by text, or you can follow me on one of the social media platforms from scanning the QR code.
All right. Excellent. Woo! Excellent session. Thank you
Thanks,
so, so
Carter.
very much.
You said
And
there's a question?
yes, I'm gonna read that here in just a moment, but just a reminder to everybody to join the community as well because we are going to do a session, a community event over there, and Natalie will be there to talk as well. We got to figure out those logistics, but those are one of the things that I want to do is to have sessions like this over there in the community where it's all of us there specifically talking about certain things just like this. So again, thank you so much for what you do. And the question over here, so I'm going to go ahead and hit start answering so this can be recorded. And so it says, can I get your thoughts on a 3 to 5 day juice cleanse?
Okay, that's a really great question. A lot of times I get asked about detoxes and cleanses. The body has its own natural abilities to cleanse. I would start with spending a week focusing on really high quality foods before jumping into any type of advanced or deep cleanses. Of course, as always, I'm not a physician. You would want to chat with your doctor for their recommendations, but most physicians are going to tell you no. So, one of the things about juice cleanses that I feel like is really important to discuss is when we take fiber away from fruit, it essentially just becomes sugar. So you can get into a very elevated blood sugar levels if you're cleansing with fruit juices. Do I think incorporating juices derived from spinach, celery, kale? I just made one whole word for a whole group of things. Um, Spinach, celery, kale, cucumbers. I think that is a great addition to a diet because you're getting a ton of the nutrients from those items versus having to eat them. Some people are like, there is no way I'm drinking juice from celery and cucumbers. It's not happening. There is a product out there called Uber Greens, and it's available at Publix. I can share a picture of it specifically, but they make a really, really good green juice. A lot of times, if I'm feeling depleted, let's say I've spent a lot of time outside, I've sweated, I've been physically active, and I feel like my body needs a little boost, I'll go pick up some green juice because it's packed with nutrients. But overall, I don't typically recommend a 3 day juice cleanse. I don't typically recommend long fasting phases. There's a time and place for all those things, but the first focus is going to be on high quality food. But
Perfect.
that's a great question. Any more fun questions?
Right, let me see. So that was the only question in the QA portion there, and I think I see any others here. Awesome. Well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. This has been, again, this has been excellent and always awesome to have you on and work with you and hear about all the good things that you're doing. And also just the way you care so much for all of it and everything that you put into it, the added love and everything in there. I dig it. Thank you for
Thank
what you
you,
do.
Ricardo. It was a pleasure to be back here with you again. And for anyone that has questions or would like to follow up and chat one on one, there's so many ways to reach me. Do not hesitate to connect or follow on social media. I share a lot of tips and tricks and food photos. So be on the lookout. And then I look forward to seeing you in the new space.
All right. Awesome.
Thanks, Ricardo.
For everyone here, we're going to be moving to the next one, and that's going to be with Dr. Angela Johnson, and she's going to be doing a session called Next Gen 911 and Practical Implications for Management Preparing for the Mental Health Impact. So we will see you all here in just a moment.